Let's sew on a button. Page 28 in the manual tells you about sewing on buttons. We're going to select the zigzag stitch, and we're going to set the stitch length to 0 because we don't want our fabric to move at all. So stitch length is at 0. The stitch width is going to be somewhere between 3 and 4. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to be because we have to test that. The stitch width needs to be set for the same distance as the distance between the holes of the button, and we're going to test that. The tension we're going to leave set at 4. So we're set up with the stitch width at 4, the stitch length at 0, and the stitch selected is the zigzag stitch. There is one other thing we have to do. That's to slide off the accessory tray. And in the back here, we want to move this slider to drop the feed dogs. That way we're sure that the fabric is not going to move while we're sewing. The hardest part of sewing on a button is making sure the button stays where you want it to be sewn. And there is a presser foot available that will hold that button in place for you. But you can also use paper tape, surgical tape that you can buy at the drugstore, and just tape the button in place where you want it. Like so. And if you have a little trouble seeing the holes of the button, you can take any sharp little object and just poke the holes in there so you can see them. Now, if you're sewing a button that has 4 holes, you can choose to sew the threads parallel to each other, or you can do a cross pattern like this where the thread intersects here in the center, and that's the one that I'm going to use for this particular button. Okay, so we're all set up. There's no presser foot on the machine. You notice that? We're not going to use a presser foot for this at all. I'm going to pull my threads here to the back of the machine. And I want to notice if the needle is left or right of center. And it looks to me like it is right of center. So I am going to hand turn my needle down in the right hole because the needle is right of center. And I'm going to turn these holes so that the line of the holes is kind of parallel to the front of the machine here. And I'm going to put the presser foot down so it sits on the button. And then I'm going to hand turn the needle and let it step over to the other hole and make sure that it's going in that hole. And it is. It went right in that hole. If it did not, then I would have to change the width of the stitch. But it went in the hole just fine, so I'm going to leave it set just like that. And now I want you to move back away from the machine. You know, a lot of people like to get their face down there close to the machine to watch what's going on. In this case, you don't want to do that. You want to get your face away from the machine just in case if anything shifts. You don't want that needle breaking and flying in your face. Okay? And now we're just going to sew, and we want the needle to go back and forth between the 2 holes 6 to 8 to 10 times. I think that's 8, so I'm going to stop there. Make sure that my needle is in the high position, and I can lift the presser foot and pull it out from under there and cut my threads. And I like to leave long thread tails. And there are the first 2 holes of my button. I'm going to turn it over to the back, and I'm going to pull one of these threads to pull the needle thread to the back, the needle thread tail to the back where I cut it. And then I would just take those 3 threads that are on the back and tie them in a knot. Well, I seem to be all thumbs here today. And I always do 3 crossovers just for security. I would put a drop of seam sealant, fray check, on there. I don't have any handy here. And then just cut that thread. If your button has only 2 holes, you're finished. This thread that's on the top, I'm just going to cut that off. If your button has just 2 holes, you're finished. If it has 4 holes, you need to sew those other 2 holes. So once again, I'm going to look at where the needle is. Happens to be right of center. I'm going to put the needle down in the right hole, lower the presser foot, check to be sure that it's going to go into that other hole, which it did, and now just sew 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and stop, and do it all again. Pull that thread to the back, tie them in a knot, drop a fray check, cut it off. There's your button. You can remove the tape. And there's your button nicely stitched. After sewing on the button, remember to take off the accessory tray, move that slider in the back to raise your feed dogs again. So I'm just reaching back there to raise them, and you'll notice that they don't come up when you move that slider. You can turn your hand wheel to be sure that they are engaged again. They just moved up, and then you're ready to put on another presser foot and sew.